The muted mountain man burned his cabin to the ground. Only the obese girl knew why he did it. In the shadow of the jagged peaks of the Rocky Mountains, where the year was 1827 and the frontier bit deep into a man's soul, the town of Bitter Creek huddled like a wary animal against the endless wilderness. Log cabins squatted along a muddy main street, their chinked walls patched with clay and moss to fend off the biting winds that howled down from the high passes. Smoke curled lazily from stone chimneys, carrying the scent of pine resin and venison stew, while settlers, mostly farmers, eking out corn and wheat from reluctant soil-traded pelts and whispers at the general store. Life here demanded self-reliance. Families spun their own wool, foraged buffalo chips for fuel when wood ran scarce, and buried their dead without preachers if the snows trapped them too long. High above the valley, on a lonely ridge where aspens clung to rocky slopes, stood, or rather had stood, the cabin of Elias Crow, the muted mountain man. No one knew his true age, but his weathered face, etched like old leather by sun and storm, placed him in his late 40s. Tall and sinewy, with a beard that tangled wild as the underbrush, Elias spoke not a word to any soul. Some said a grizzly had torn his tongue in a brawl years back. Others whispered of a Blackfoot arrow or a vow of silence after losing kin to fever. He trapped beaver alone, hauling his plues down once a season to trade for powder, lid, and salt, then vanished back into the peaks without a grunt or gesture beyond a nod. The townsfolk tolerated him as they did wolves' necessary evils in this raw land where class meant little and every man scratched his survival from the dirt. That spring, after the harshest winter in memory, one that starved cattle herds and left frozen corpses half buried in snowdrifts, the acrid stench of smoke woke Bitter Creek before dawn. Riders galloped into town, shouting of flames devouring Elias's cabin atop Firehawk Ridge. By midday, a posse led by Mayor Harlan Judd, a burly ex-farmer with a temper as quick as his axe, crested the rise. Nothing remained but a smoldering pyre of blackened logs, the heat still shimmering the air. Elias sat cross-legged amid the ashes, his buckskin singed at the hems, staring blankly at the horizon. No traps, no pelts, no sign of salvage, just him and the ruin. "Damn fools burned his own home," Judd bellowed, dismounting with a splash into the mud. His men roughnecks like blacksmith Amos Tate and trapper Jed Harlan circled warily, rifles loose but ready. Whispers flew. Elias had gone mad from cabin fever, or worse, hidden a body in those flames. Tales swirled of missing prospectors last fall, of screams echoing from the ridge during storms. In a land where Indian raids and starvation stalked every shadow, suspicion festered fast. They bound Elias's wrists with rawhide, ignoring his futile grunts and headshakes, and dragged him down the trail on horseback. He offered no resistance, his dark eyes flickering only once toward the distant tree line, where a faint haze lingered like a secret. Word spread like the fire itself. At the saloon, a clapboard shack reeking of whiskey and sweat, men gathered around potbelly stoves, fueled by twisted prairie grass. "Saw it myself," Jed boasted, slamming a tin mug down. He sat there smiling like the devil whilst it blazed. Must 'a' offed his squaw partner or something. Women at the Quilting Bee clucked tongues, their homespun dresses patched from flax and wool. Children eavesdropped, wide-eyed, as parents muttered of lynching. The frontier bred hard justice. No sheriff patrolled these parts, just town councils and vigilante ropes when hunger or greed turned neighbor against neighbor. Amid the clamor, stood Eliza Mayford, known to all as the Obese Girl, though at 19 she loathed the name. Plump as a river otter in fur, her cheeks flushed rosy under a bonnet too tight for her frame, Eliza hauled water from the creek for her widowed mother's laundry. The taunts had shadowed her since childhood. Lard-ass Lizzie! Boys jeered during barn raisings, yet she bore them with quiet steel, her hands calloused from churning butter and carding wool. That winter, starvation nipped close. Her family slaughtered the last sow, and Eliza had trudged miles alone for roots and berries, her skirts muddied to the knees. She watched Elias's arrest from the livery stable's edge, heart pounding, for she alone knew the truth buried in those ashes. It began 3 nights prior when thunderhead split the sky and lightning clawed the peaks. Eliza, restless from hunger pangs that gnawed like wolves, slipped from her loft bed. Drawn by an orange glow far up the ridge, a glow no campfire made, she donned her woolen shawl and boots, stealing into the storm. Mud sucked at her steps as she climbed the deer trail, breath heaving in the icy rain. There she beheld Elias, axe in hand, slashing at flames licking the underbrush below his cabin. Embers from a lightning-struck pine had kindled a blaze racing downwind, straight toward Bitter Creek's tinder-dry valley. Wind-whipped, the fire crowned the treetops, roaring like a beast unchained. Elias fought alone, a titan against inferno. He beat flames with wet boughs, dug fire breaks with bare hands till blood mixed with dirt, and bellowed silent curses at the sky. When the blaze neared his cabin, he doused it futilely, then eyes fierce with resolve touched torch to his own hearth. The structure ignited like tinder, its updraft sucking the flames skyward, starving the ground fire of fuel. Eliza hid in the rocks, trembling, witnessing his desperate gamble. By dawn, the blaze guttered out, turned aside from the town. Exhausted, he collapsed amid the ruins, awaiting discovery. She fled unseen, vowing silence until now. Back in town, the council convened in the meeting hall, a drafty barn with pews of split logs. Judd pounded a Bible for gavel. Elias Crow stands accused of arson and suspicion of murder, speaks no words in his defense. What say you? Murmurs rose like steam. Eliza hovered at the door, pulse thundering. To speak meant facing scorn, her word worthless against men's rifles. Yet as they voted chains for the jail wagon, a twist clawed her gut. Young Timmy Hargrove, Jed's boy, had vanished scouting traps that week. Whispers pinned it on Elias' now plot twist, born of fear. She swallowed hard. The mountain man's eyes met hers across the crowd, mute plea burning bright. The meeting hall thrummed with tension, its air thick with the tang of unwashed bodies and pipe smoke from corncob bowls. Flickering lanterns cast long shadows across rough-hewn benches packed with Bitter Creek souls, farmers in denim overalls patched with feed sacks, women in sunbonnets clutching babes to calico bosoms, and grizzled trappers nursing flasks of homemade rye. Mayor Judd loomed at the front, his blacksmith arms crossed over a wool vest stained with axle grease. Elias Crow slumped in irons against a post, his mute gaze sweeping the crowd like a hawk scanning for prey. Outside, spring mud pooled under a sky bruised purple by dusk, while dogs bayed at distant coyotes. Jed Harlan rose first, his trapper's frame lean from months gnawing jerky and hardtack on the trails. "That devil sat grinning in the ashes, Judd. My boy Timmy, 10 years old, bold as brass, ain't been seen since scouting beaver dams last week. Tracks led right up that ridge afore vanishing. Elias here traps alone, speaks to no man. What if he at the lad in some fever dream? Burned the evidence! Gasps rippled through the hall. Timmy's ma wailed, clutching a rag doll stained with berry juice. Whispers twisted into snarls. Cabin fever, Indian blood, a squaw's ghost haunting him to madness. In this land of scant law, where possas strung up horse thieves from cottonwoods without trial, the accusation hung like a noose. Eliza pressed against the doorframe, her ample frame wedged in homespun wool that strained at the seams. Heart hammering like a trip hammer at the grist mill, she tasted bile. Speak now, and the town, her town, that mocked her as Buttertub Eliza, would turn on her. Boys had pelted her with corn cobs at last harvest, hollering she'd burst like an overfed hog. Yet Elias's eyes locked on hers again, dark pools reflecting her hidden truth. She knew Timmy's fate, too. The boy had tumbled into a swollen creek during the storm, swept away unseen. She'd glimpsed his cap snagged on branches days later while foraging dandelion greens and wild onions for her ma's thin stew. But to reveal that meant admitting her wanderings unchaperoned, improper for a girl her size. Drama coiled tighter as Amos Tate, the blacksmith whose forge rang dawn to dusk, hammering plowshares from scrap iron, lumbered forward. Found this in the ashes. He flung a charred bundle onto the puncheon floor, a child's moccasin, sole melted but uppers intact, beads glinting faintly Blackfoot style, or so he claimed. Elias trades with hostiles. Timmy's foot would fit. The crowd surged, fists clenched. Judd nodded gravely. Guilty till proven, boys. Lock him till circuit judge rides in from Laramie 3 weeks. Maybe more if Sue trouble the trail. Rough hands yanked Elias upright. He grunted, thrashing once, pointing urgently toward the eastern tree line where Hayes still ghosted. No one heeded. They hauled him to the log jail, a dank pit with straw-littered floor and iron-barred window overlooking the creek. Night fell heavy, pierced by saloon lanterns and the lowing of milk cows driven home from sparse pastures of bunch grass and sage. Eliza fled to her family's cabin, a squat affair of notched pine, daubed with clay, its roof thatched with rye straw. Inside, her ma stirred a pot of cornmeal mush over a fire fed by twisted hay and cow chips, the only fuel since woodlots dwindled. Pa had died of flux 2 winters past, leaving Eliza the man of the house chopping kindling with a froe, mending harness with hog-bristle thread, hauling sledges of squash and beans from their half-acre plot. "Heard the ruckus, girl?" Ma rasped, her hands gnarled from carding wool into rovings for the great wheel. Eliza nodded, throat tight, and ladled mush into bowls fired from local clay. Sleep evaded her. Moonlight silvered the loft window where she lay on a tick mattress stuffed with corn shucks and wildfowl feathers. Memories flooded. That storm-lashed night, not her first shadowing Elias. Months prior, hunger gnawing after blight withered their potatoes, she'd tracked him for scraps. Found him instead sharing jerked venison by his fire, gesturing her near without alarm. No words passed, but his eyes, kind, unjudging, fed her soul. He'd left a snare of rabbits at her door next dawn, vanishing like smoke. And now, this fire. She'd hidden as flames crowned, watching him dig trenches with a grub hoe till shoulders bled through buckskin. When the blaze veered toward town, wind shifted, devouring pine duff toward cornfields and cabins. He torched his own roof timbers, creating a firewall that robbed the beast of ground fuel. Genius, born of desperate wisdom. Plot twist struck at midnight. A pebble rattled her window. Eliza bolted upright, peering into shadows. A figure, small, mud-caked, scrambled up the rain barrel. Timmy Hargrove, alive. "Hide me, Eliza. Pa thinks Elias took me, but I fell in the crick, washed miles down, hid in a beaver lodge 3 days, eatin' bark. Climbed out tonight, heard the meetin'. Don't let 'em hang the quiet man." Her blood ran cold. Timmy, fearing his pa's wrath for wandering off, pinned it on Elias to deflect blame. The moccasin, his own, lost in the flood. Drama peaked, exposed Timmy, shattered Jed's heart. Stay silent. Doom Elias. She pulled the boy inside, bundling him in blankets reeking of lanolin, feeding him cornbread crumbs softened in milk from their lone Jersey cow. Dawn broke with rooster crows echoing off bluffs. Eliza faced crossroads. Town buzzed. Women fetched water in zinc pails from the spring. Men yoked oxen for plowing furrows in loam heavy with last night's rain. At the jail, Elias huddled in irons, gnawing a heel of sow-belly tossed through bars. Eliza marched to the council, Timmy's secret burning her chest, but Jed blocked her path, eyes red-rimmed. "Stay out, fat girl. This ain't for quilting bees." Humiliation stung, yet resolve hardened. Inside the hall, Judd reconvened. "Witnesses, speak, or we string him come noon." Eliza stepped forward, voice steady as a rifle crack. "I saw it all. Elias didn't burn for madness or murder. He burned to save us." Gasps. Judd sneered. "You? Lying for scraps from his traps?" She pressed on, detailing the lightning strike, the racing crown fire, Elias's lone battle-wet sacks flung, backfiring his cabin to halt the inferno's march on Bitter Creek's haystacks and homes. "Check the ridge. Fire break scars. Lightning pine stump. It'll prove true." Skepticism rippled, but Amos rode out with posse, returning ashen-faced. Scars confirmed. No body. No crime. Timmy's cap found downstream, moccasin traced to creek mud. Jed blanched, son dragged forth confessing tearfully. Shame blanketed the hall. Judd unlocked Elias's chains. "We misjudged, mountain man. Town owes you." Elias rubbed wrists, eyes softening on Eliza gratitude deeper than words. Cheers erupted, hands clapping his back. That night, barn-raising commenced anew. Axes felled pines, adzes shaped logs. Women brewed cider from wild apples. Eliza hammered chinking with corncob mortar, her curves no longer mocked, but admired. Elias nodded thanks, pressing a beaver plume necklace into her palm beads from distant streams. Yet drama lingered. Whispers of Eliza's witchy watchin' stirred old fears. A jealous suitor, livery hand Buck Ramsey Gaunt from saloon rotgut spread lies. She'd bewitched Elias for favors. Plot twist. Buck, spurned by slimmer girls, torched a rival's hayrick to frame her, flames licking toward the new cabin rays. Elias spotted it first, mute roar charging into night. Eliza followed, bucket brigade forming. Together they quenched it. Buck caught red-handed fleeing. Justice swift, tarred, feathered, run out on a rail. Weeks blurred into the rhythm of frontier toil under a sun that baked the valley brown. Bitter Creek stirred awake each dawn to the clang of Amos Tate's hammer on glowing iron-shoeing plow mules, or forging harrow teeth from wagon tires, while women kindled hearth fires with twists of prairie grass and cow chips, boiling coffee from parched rye and dented pots. Men yoked shaggy longhorns to breaking plows, turning sod clods in fields of corn and sorghum, their denim shirts sweat-soaked by noon. Children scattered to gather hen eggs from willow thickets or drive geese from kitchen gardens bursting with turnips, cabbages, and potatoes nursed from last fall's seed corn. Elias's new cabin rose swiftly on a firehawk ridge, its squared logs hewn with adzes and draw knives, chinked with lime mortar mixed from creek clay. Eliza thrived in the shift. No longer obese girl. Townsfolk called her Fire Warden Eliza, pressing extra squash and smoked trout into her apron at the trading post. Ma beamed, her hands busy carding wool fleeces from their few merino sheep into fluffy bats for the spinning wheel, dreaming of linsey-woolsey cloth come winter. Eliza hauled pine poles for fencing, her sturdy frame a boon where slimmer girls faltered, and at quilting frolics shared tales of Elias's blaze battle to wide-eyed listeners. Yet under the goodwill simmered envy. Buck Ramsey's kin sour-faced herders with mutton-chopped beards glared from their sheep range, muttering of her mountain man witchery. Drama brewed as drought cracked the earth, wells running dry till women lugged water from the spring in oaken yokes. Elias watched from afar, rebuilding alone by day, notching corner timbers with a broadaxe, splitting shingles from cedar bolts with a froe and mallet, thatching the roof with rye straw bound by willow withes. Mute as ever, he communicated in gestures pointing out straight-grained pine to volunteers, nodding thanks over shared noons of johnny cake and sow-belly fried in bear grease. His eyes sought Eliza often, lingering when she brought cider jugs or wild plum preserves jarred in beeswax-sealed crocks. One eve, as dusk painted the peaks gold, he carved her a willow whistle, pressing it into her palm with a rare smile cracking his beard. Her cheeks burned hotter than forge coals. No man had seen past her curves before. Plot twist ignited on a parched afternoon. Jed Harlan burst into the general store, face ashen as wood ash. Timmy's fever-racked coughing blood. Doc says flux like your pa, Eliza. Blame that witch girl's lies. She cursed us for doubting the mute. Panic rippled. Flux dysentery from tainted creek water had claimed half a wagon train last summer, bellies cramping till husks remained. Jed's accusation twisted old fears. Eliza, seen foraging pizen roots on the ridge, had poisoned the well out of spite. A mob formed, pitchforks and lanterns in hand, marching on her cabin. Ma barred the door with a chest, but fists pounded puncheons. Eliza fled out back, skirts hiked, sprinting for Elias's half-built walls. He met her halfway, rifle primed with goose-quill fowling powder, eyes thunderous. The mob halted at his stance lone guardian, myth made flesh. Judd intervened, voice booming, "Easy, Harlan! Girl saved us once! Hear her!" Drama crested as Eliza spilled the truth. Timmy's fever from creek slime after floods, not curse. She'd boiled water with sumac bark and willow tea, old remedies from Granny's lore for the sick. Proof mounted when Amos tested the well. Dead rats, upstream from sheep wallows. Jed collapsed weeping, begging pardon. Elias slung his rifle, guiding Eliza home through cheering neighbors bearing honey and jerked elk. Her heroism etched deeper. Whispers turned to songs round campfires fed by cottonwood limbs. Seasons wheeled. Fall brought harvest frolics, corn-husking bees where lads hid trinkets and shucks for girls to find, fiddles scraping jigs on horsehair bows, barrels of peach brandy fermenting in root cellars dug from sandstone. Elias's cabin stood complete double pen with dog-trot breezeway, puncheon floors pegged with locust nails, a puncheon table hewn flat and legless for easy sweeping. He invited the town for housewarming. Venison roasts spitted over hickory coals, pumpkin pies baked in a Dutch oven, swung from a tripod, fiddle tunes till owls hooted. Eliza arrived last, bearing a quilt pieced from indigo-dyed wool and calico scraps, hearts apleeked in red thread. Their bond deepened in stolen moments. Winter snows blanketed the ridge, drifts hip-deep, families hunkered with feather ticks and warming pans filled with embers. Elias trapped marten lines, snowshoes laced from rawhide thongs, crunching powder. Eliza visited under storm skies, trading bread for pelts, their hands brushing over candlelight from tallow dips molded in pewter. No words needed. His gestures traced her face, admiration plain. She confessed fears, taunts of barrenness, unfit for marriage in this land prizing brood mares. He shook head fiercely, carving her a locket from elk antler inside a lock of his hair bound with sinew. Spring 1828, thawed with plot twist, raiders, renegade, crow braves, driven hungry by vanishing buffaloes, struck the outskirts, running off horses and firing arrows fletched with eagle feathers. Panic gripped Bitter Creek. Men formed a stockade from peeled cottonwood poles. Women loaded squirrel rifles with patched balls. Elias scouted alone, returning at midnight smeared in war paint, dragging a stolen pony laden with stolen powder kegs. He'd ambushed the band single-handed, silent arrows from his longbow felling two, the rest fleeing. Eliza cleaned his wounds by firelight, bear-claw gashes from a knife fight, stitching with elk sinew and willow bark poultice. In delirium, he gripped her hand, murmuring first words in years, stay, heart voice, gravel from disuse. Her tears fell. The mute spoke for her. Words spread, awe-hushing doubters. Elias explained fragments, tongues severed by Blackfoot torture decades back, surviving only by will. Eliza became his voice, translating gestures at councils. Romance bloomed openly, courting walks along the creek, him netting trout with willow traps, her frying them in cornmeal crust over river stones, stolen kisses behind aspen groves, her curves embraced fully. Ma approved, gifting a hope chest of linens spun fine as spider silk. Wedding set for midsummer under a pole arbor draped in wild rose vines, preacher riding from Laramie on a mule with a Bible-thumping saddlebags. Yet drama peaked pre-vows. Buck's brother, vengeful Walt Ramsey, rallied malcontent squatters, cheated of claims plotting to burn the town anew, framing Elias. Eliza overheard at the saloon, where men swigged 40-rod lightning from demijohns. She raced warnings. Posse ambushed them at moonrise, Walt confessing tearfully. Elias spared his life, binding wounds of mercy turning foes to friends. Town unity, forged iron strong. Midsummer 1828 draped Bitter Creek in golden haze, fields waving knee-high corn tassels and oats ripening under relentless sun. Women hoed kitchen gardens rich with beans climbing pole teepees, peas shelled into willow baskets, and melons swelling on vine mats mulched with straw. Men scythed hay from creek bottoms, stacking shocks with pitchforks to cure for winter feed, while boys drove hogs to wallows to cool hides scarred from bramble scratches. The air hummed with cicadas and the distant ring of axes felling timber for rail fences snaking through pastures dotted with longhorn steers. Elias and Eliza's wedding loomed, the town abuzz like bees in a hollow log. The arbor rose on the town green, a sturdy frame of peeled aspen poles lashed with greenhide, festooned with wild rose vines heavy with pink blossoms, their thorns pricking calloused fingers. Ma Mayford oversaw quilts stretched on frames for the feast, needle pulling thread through blocks of turkey-red calico and indigo-dyed homespun, patterns like "Rob Peter to pay Paul," symbolizing shared hardship. Eliza's gown, fashioned from bolt ends traded at the store muslin bleached snowy with wood ash lye, bodice fitted with bone buttons, skirt gathered full to drape her ample hips, hung ready in the loft. No mirror graced their cabin, but Ma's nod assured beauty born of spirit, not slender waist. Drama stirred eve before. Walt Ramsey's confession cracked open deeper rot. A rival claim jumper, Silas Snake McCoy, had infiltrated the malcontents. Snake, a gaunt Missourian with eyes like agate chips and a stiletto scar twisting his lip, coveted Firehawk Ridge for rumored silver veins. Disguised as a peddler, he'd peddled rot-gut whiskey cut with tobacco juice to sway weak wills, plotting to ambush Elias at the altar, seize the land amid chaos. Eliza learned from Timmy Hargrove, now hale in her shadow, eavesdropping at the livery where Snake sharpened a bowie knife on a whetstone slick with hog fat. Heart-seizing, she confided in Judd, who rallied trusted men Amos with his sledge, Jed with squirrel rifle, plot twist uncoiled at dawn. As fiddlers tuned horsehair strings for Arkansas Traveler, Snake's gang struck early six shadows, slipping from cottonwood cover, torches flaring pitch pine knots toward the arbor, stacked with feast tables, groaning under roast shote, glazed in maple sap, corn dodgers steaming from Dutch ovens, and berry cobblers in iron skillets. Shouts pierced the morn, women snatched babes, men grabbed axes. Elias, shaved beard neat with sheep shears, buckskins pressed with flat irons heated on coals, burst from his cabin like a grizzly roused. Mute roar, silent but thunderous, he felled two with longbow arrows tipped buffalo bone, wrestled a third into mud churned by panicked hooves. Eliza, skirts kilted to knees, revealing woolen stockings darned with darning egg, bucketed creek water on flames licking dry grass. Her voice rallied, "To the ridge! Snake's the head!" Posse thundered up the trail, cornering the leader, in Elias's old firebreak scar, a testament to his first heroism. Snake lunged, knife flashing moonlike. Elias parried with tomahawk haft, disarming him with a bone-crunching twist. No killing Elias bound him with lariat rope braided from horsehair, dragging him to town square. Confession spilled under Judd's gavel. Forged deeds, poisoned wells prior blaming Eliza. Gallows loomed, but mercy prevailed, tar and feather ride out on rail, never to return. Wedding proceeded unbowed, preacher Reverend Hale arriving dust-caked on muleback, Bible dog-eared from circuit trails harried by Pawnee. Under the arbor, petals drifting like snow, Elias took Eliza's hands, eyes speaking vows deeper than tongue could frame. "In sight of God and these witnesses," Hale intoned, "I pronounce Elias Crow and Eliza Mayford man and wife." Cheers erupted. Fiddles struck, turkey in the straw, couples whirling do-si-dos on packed dirt, skirts flaring, boots stomping rhythms pounded out on wash-tubs for drums. Feast devoured. Pies washed down with spruce beer fermented in crocks, men arm-wrestling on sawhorses, children chasing greased piglets, squealing in glee. Honeymoon unfolded in ridge solitude. Elias carried Eliza over new puncheon threshold, hearth-crackling birch knots scented sweet. Their cabin gleamed, loft bed framed willow, tick-stuffed goose down, plucked from moults, table laden with pewter plates hammered from tin, walls hung with plue bundles and her quilt warming the double bedstead. Nights blurred in tender exploration, his hands mapping her curves like uncharted streams, her laughter echoing off logs as he taught snare setting by starlight. Words trickled from him slowly. "Fire! Saved! You!" Gravel voice naming her his blaze. She traced tongue scar, remnant of Blackfoot captivity where he'd slain captors, fleeing maimed but free. Winters passed in frontier cadence. 1829 brought blizzards burying doors hip deep, families tunneling out to chop wood from windfall spruce. Elias trapped beaver brigades, snowshoes webbed elk hide, crunching crust. Eliza tanning plews with brains and bark solutions stretched on frames. Spring calved their first, little Amos, bawling lustily, red-faced as his namesake blacksmith, inheriting Elias's dark eyes and her sturdy build. Town midwives, grannies, versed in blue cohosh teas for easing birth-cooed approval. Christening at creek shallows, hail-splashing Jordan water, fetched wagon train style. Drama revisited 1830. Drought withered crops to stubble, locusts blackening skies, devouring chaff. Whispers blamed Crow curse Elias's Indian scars portending doom. A preacher's zealot, Brother Zeke from wagon train remnants, rallied flock with hellfire sermons in the meeting hall, torches to burn the mute heathen and his plump Jezebel. Plot twist, Zeke's own son, consumptive and shunned, healed by Eliza's sassafras root cough syrup brewed over coals. Boy testified publicly, Zeke flogged by conscience, converting to advocate. Rains broke, corn sprouted anew.